I can't believe that you have an appearance, and I didn't even mention Beyonce. Don't you have a movie to go to? Isn't a Beyonce movie out?
Yes, I already got my tickets and my outfit.
Jody Mitchell never lies. Anyway, since you're here, just stick around with us. If you can't tell by the outfit, got till it's gone. Today we are talking about Janet Jackson, and we were talking about her incredible discography. We're going to be ranking it from bottom to top. The internet's told me it's better than Michael's. We're going to see. Welcome, players, to another edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions here on YouTube. You know who it is. It's your boy, and yes, I'm joined by not only Beyonce's #1 stan, but Janet's too. You were on Janet back in the day, right?
Yes, Janet was my Beyonce before Beyonce was Beyonce.
Oh, really? But Janet was Beyonce's Beyonce, if you want to put it like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Janet was the person who influenced so many artists, from Beyonce to Sierra to Aaliyah and so many others today. If there's a blueprinted artist that you're like, man, they're trying to be like Beyonce, no, they actually trying to be like Janet. She was the one who paved that ground. So today we're going to talk about Janet's incredible discography. I know the internet was saying that Janet's discography was better than Michael's. I don't think so. But I will show Janet a lot of love because her discography is deeper than Michael's and maybe even a little bit more consistent. But we're going to talk about it in just a second. But before we do that, y'all know what time it is. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Show this video some love and be sure to hit the subscribe button. Like I said in a couple of videos a few weeks ago, I looked on the analytics because I can do that now, and I saw that like over half of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribers. That's so weird to me when all you have to do is push a button and you can be a subscriber. So go ahead and do that for your boy. Thank you so much. And when the video is done, and it's dope because of course it will be sure to share it with your fellow Janet fans like the one that I have right across from me. So all that talking aside, let's talk about Janet and her great discography. At least most of them great. These early ones, I don't know. Alright, kicking us off at number 11 is Dream Street, an album that I bet some of even you hardcore Janet stans on the internet probably haven't dug into. This is a sophomore album, and I don't want to call it a sophomore slump, but it was definitely a change in direction that did not work. We know Janet for her trailblazing pop songs, and we also know her for her strong R&B songs. This is just some straight up bubblegum poppy stuff, player. You can just tell from the album cover. It's like some Jim and the Holograms level stuff, which is fun, but it's definitely nothing distinct. And in that era in the 80s, there was absolutely nothing about it that stood out. So, okay album if you want to look at it for a historical aspect. It's not something that you're going to like, delete it from your playlist necessarily, but it's not an album that you would revisit very much. We would see a lot of growth, once Janet got a little bit of control over her career. Coming in at number 10 is the debut. Yes, a lot of y'all be thinking Control is the first album. Absolutely not. The first Janet Jackson album is called Janet Jackson. And a little bit like Dream Street, it's not bad, it's just not very memorable. It's just kind of a, cut and paste Jackson 5 deal. Again, Janet was an artist that was just trying to find her voice, trying to come into her own, and at this point in her career, they just had her doing what her brothers was doing. And again, that's okay, but an artist has to establish herself and find her own voice. She would do that very, very soon after, but here, this was more of a kind of proving ground. It's not a bad album. It's one that Again, if for historical context, might be worth a look. But as far as something that you would rock all the time, probably not. Check it out just to say you have. Coming in at number 9, the first album I'm sure will get me in trouble with the stands is Discipline. This is the first album, well, not the first album, but this was kind of a way for Janet to move away from her collaborations with Jimmy Jam and Terry, and she took kind of a different path and incorporated a lot more electronica and sounds that were new to her. And it sort of works, but overall, I found it to be a very uneven album. There's some good songs on it, some really good songs that people really celebrate today, but it's not an album that I really go back to. Now, I know that it was very big in the dance community. People were tearing this album up, and if that's your thing, you know, maybe if you're in the Renaissance crew and you love that, that might be a sound that could work for you for that. So if you're into dance electronica, there's lots of stuff here for that. And even though some of those songs are good, I just think the overall package just has too many bumps and bruises in it. I appreciate trying to do something different with this project, but I just don't think it was a total win across the board. It has its fans though. I'm sure they'll be cussing me out in the comments. I'm just not a big one. Coming in at number 8 is 20YO, an album that, again, is going to get me in trouble because it seems like Janet fans hate this album. I don't really know why. Maybe it was because she was still kind of doing some stuff with Jermaine Dupri around this time, and I know people are weird about that association. But I thought this album was pretty solid. It's an album that, again, kind of goes a little bit back to her R&B roots. And everything doesn't always work as well as it should, but I find a lot of the album cuts to be super underrated. It's an album that I can really play from front to back without a whole bunch of skip, like it happens on Discipline when I check that one out. So it's not a fan favorite at all, and it's not a big blockbuster like the ones we'll get into later on this list by any means. It's actually probably one of her more forgettable albums, and I kind of hate that because this whole album was shaped around celebrating her 20 years in the game and proving that she still is as useful and got it like the 20-year-olds. I think both of those things were true, just didn't have anything memorable to go along with that package, and to me, that's the biggest sin. I like this more than most. Maybe some of you do, but the reception of that one was a little mid, unfortunately. I liked it. Coming in at number 7 is Janet with Unbreakable, her 2015 album, the last one to date as of this video. There have been rumors of new albums for years, so who knows, maybe by the time this pops we'll hear about the new album to come. But I will show this album a lot of love because honestly, my expectations were not that high for a Janet Jackson album in 2015. Now, before you tear me up, I'm not saying that I expected garbage because Janet doesn't give garbage. Even Discipline, which I don't love, is still a solid album in aspects. But this album just really exceeded what I thought. I thought it was a really strong album. I love the No Sleep single with J. Cole, but beyond that, there was just so many album cuts that really stuck with me. There's a lot of consistency to Janet's projects, and this is one that works in its favor. Front to back, it's another enjoyable listening experience because it just sonically works together. Not just a bunch of stuff thrown everywhere. And that helps the whole story that's being told across the album. It showed that Janet still got some gas in the tank too. When we see that she's still touring and she's still doing the thing, but Janet is not an artist that just has to tour off the hits. This album proves that she got some gas in the tank as far as new material too. And it's a promising that makes me want my ear ready for a new project from her. Unbreakable really was one that exceeded my expectations and got me ready for whatever new thing she's got over in the chamber. Coming in at number 6 is All For You. Now, I'm old enough to remember that All For You got kind of a mixed reaction when it dropped back in the day. I've seen it a little bit more favorably received today, but I was around in 2001 and people were kind of on it. And I understand, this was her kind of drift back into the pop realm after being more rooted in R&B for a few years prior. So she was doing her pop thing, and listen, this is home to some of her biggest songs ever. But like some albums that we'll get to later on, the one big thing against this one is a little lengthy, it's a little long. I could have done some editing if I had done it, but you know, they got some dope little songs, a little China Love, some songs like that can kind of make the album cut experience good, which you know for me is always, you want to boost up your album review score, give me some good album cuts beyond the singles. Fun singles, I love the title track, that still gets me hyped, makes me think of the little robot dog in the video. But it's the overall package isn't always well received, but I was a fan of it. I think it still holds up today. So just a fun album. It's fun, it's energetic, and we need more fun albums. Everything ain't got to be sad and depressing. Give me some escapism. I like that album for that. And even though it was probably a little bit of expectations weren't met in some ways in 2001, 2023, I'm rocking. Speaking of albums with weird expectations, oh boy, coming in at number 5 is Damita Jo. Now, I'm not going to go on another Justin Timberlake rant because I've done it enough. Janet said, leave the little boy alone. Leave the little boy alone. Lord, I'm tired of hearing about Justin Timberlake every 10 seconds. Now, whether it's wardrobe malfunction gate or who got canceled and who got blackballed, I don't want to get into that. There's a whole separate video. You can go to soulandstereo.com. I have talked about that at length for years. But regardless of all of the drama that was going on, Damita Jo was the album that came out of that chaos, and because of that, it really underperformed. Now, you can say it was blackballed, you can say it wasn't pushed, you can say, and a lot of that was absolutely true. It did not get the push it received, but I'm here to talk about the quality. I'm not here to talk about the politics. And in terms of quality, I really liked it. This was a more R&B project as opposed to the more pop ones that we had gotten prior to this, and I love the return to the R&B sound. And like I Want You, to me, is one of her most underrated songs ever. Kanye killed that beat back when he had good sense. But the overall package, I think that it's kind of weighed down due to the drama of the era. As an album pulled from that, and we just listened to it in a vacuum, it's a very good album. Clearly, if I ranked it this high, I think it's one of her best albums, and it deserved more love. Just get it away from all of the foolishness, and you will see this an absolutely strong project that had her really embrace those R&B roots again. To me, R&B Janet is probably the best Janet, and it was good to see that shine here so brightly. Love me some Damita Jo. Great album. Alright, coming in at number 4 is the self-titled Janet album, Janet. Lowercase J. Well, lowercase j to the big case J. Let me know why you love this album so much, because I got it at number 4 and I'm sure you're feeling the type of way about that.
I am feeling the type of way about that.
No, really.
This album is perfection. It is, I love every single track on this album, every song, every interlude. It doesn't get old. I mean, this came out in '93 and I could still rock this from start to finish today. Everybody knew that if dance. I could break it out for you right now.
Well,
right now.
I don't know if we got room in the camera for that.
But real talk, I just love how much variety this album has too. Because, you know, she's got all the sexy songs, the love songs, but she also has the really meaningful songs that are about social issues like New Agenda. She's talking about domestic violence. I mean, she's talking about everything on this album. It is just, it's perfection. And I don't understand why it's not number 1.
Well, I can tell you why it's number 1. I agree with you on everything you said. I think this is one of the defining albums of the 90s, one of the best albums of the 90s, and one of the albums that's most associated with her career. And it's got some banging songs on it too, of course. The only thing that holds it back, if I must be unbiased reviewer Ed, is that the length of it is a little too long.
I knew you were going to say that.
Those interludes, it's a little too much.
No.
Well,
No. I knew you were going to say that.
Oh, really?
Because I know you don't like super long albums. But every song is good. And every interlude is good.
Every interlude is not good.
Yes,
but
it is.
most of the songs are good. I will give you that. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad album at all. Number 4 is not a bad ranking. To me, it just doesn't have the consistency across the board. And although I agree with you, most of the songs are dope, I would cut off like 3 or 4 to make it a little bit more tight and succinct. But you can't deny the legacy of this album. It's pretty great. And obviously, we got fans in the house for it.
Indeed.
Coming in at number 3, yup. Honestly, before we get to number 3, let me tell you, number 3, number 2, and number 1, you can make an argument for any of them being the top album in that list. This is my list though, so I'm putting this at number 3, The Breakout, and we're talking about Control. The album's so good it made y'all forget 2 whole albums existed. That's how dope it was. This was Janet's opportunity, as the name of it just basically spells out. She was taking control over her career. No more daddy's girl. She's going to do what she wants, and she became her own woman on this album. When you look at this track list, and you realize this track list looks like a greatest hits album in and of itself, it tells you the power and impact of that album. This is the album, along with one more that we're going to get to on the list, are the ones that have influenced a generation of young black entertainers. If you dancing, if you tearing up the stage, if you're just letting your soul just be put on blast as you just break your heels, all of that came from Control. Such a powerful statement and an absolute turning point in black music in general. We talk about classics. This is an absolute classic and one that Janet can hang her hat on. And it's number 3 on the list. I know some of y'all mad it's not number 1. And if you said it was number 1, I wouldn't even argue that hard. But I don't think that it has from front to back the consistency of number 1 and number 2 on our list. Great album though, absolutely a classic and one that has redefined music. That's right, the hair's back, and coming in at number 2, my favorite Janet Jackson album, yep, it's The Velvet Rope. And the hair wasn't the only change in 1997. We also got a new sound from Janet, one in my opinion that would help to influence the neo-soul movement that would occur just a couple years later. So we heard Janet in 94, the R&B sound that she delivered there, very kind of traditional and of the times, but most of the R&B in the late 90s was more hip-hop influenced. No, our girl Janet went very soulful and very personal on this record. She was getting very deep in a lot of personal traumas, and those records still resonated with a lot of people. I know that, you know, if you like radio, you like the Blackstreet joint, and I love it too. But really, it's the deeper songs, like the songs like My Need, the songs that didn't get the airplay, that were just so soulful and so addictive, that really captured her. It was a different sound, a different time. And when I think of the Janet eras, you know, you got the Control era, you got the Rhythm Nation era, you got the Janet era. But this era of Janet, to me, The Velvet Rope, this is the definitive Janet album for my fandom. This is when Janet, who I always liked and thought was cool, this is when I really started to resonate with her and see her maturity as an artist. The hair was cool. The album was even doper.
Why do you still have on that wig?
Can I play a live? And here we are, obviously number 1. We're talking about Rhythm Nation, an album that has redefined a generation of music. When Rhythm Nation itself becomes its own term outside the album, you know that's when a classic is born. When someone says Stan, when someone says Ether, when you're talking about the Rhythm Nation, you know that you're talking about not just a cultural phenomenon, you're talking about an album, and that's the impact an album has made. Similar to Control, this was like the second step in that evolution, and everything was better. Everything was taken to another level. The collabos with Jimmy Jam and Terry were just legendary. Janet was at her peak, probably creatively. Well, I don't know. Maybe Velvet Rope might be the creative peak in my eyes, because you know how much I love that album. But in terms of her actual impact on pop culture, it does not get any stronger than Rhythm Nation. I mean, if someone walks out on the stage today with a button-up jacket and the hat on and the gloves, first thing you're going to say is Janet Rhythm Nation, because that's the impact that album had, not just culture, not just musically, but as culture as well. It is a statement to Janet, it's a statement to black womanhood, and in my opinion, her best album to date. This brother gives that thing 5 stars, because Rhythm Nation, you can't hate on it. And that is all of them. All 11 Janet Jackson albums from bottom to top, from the legacy to the early days to the classics to the ones in between. Pretty decent discography if you ask me. But that was my opinion, so it's time for you to share yours. Let me know which Janet albums you think are the dopest. Go ahead and run to that comment section and let me know what's good so we can interact and talk about that. Are you a fan of the new albums? Or do you think Janet should have been a little bit higher?
Yes.
I figured that you would have an amen corner on that one. But if that's your thing, you just let us know. This edition of the Soul and Stereo Sessions is a wrap. Where my wig at? I wanted to wrap up with my wig. Play on, players.